Hi, I'm Liz James, or Elizabeth, or Elysia Neon, or Bette Milner, depending on whereabouts you came into my life or when you met me on my journey. Um, I've been asked to talk about some of my ways that I've been dealing with healing, this healing journey, for people to find out a little bit more about me. And it's nothing. Nothing's been secret. But I am quite a quiet person. I'm quite an introspective person. Always have been. One of the ways that I've always dealt with emotional instability or not being able to get a grasp on what's going on is by writing. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about my books, specifically this one today. But I've published about 11, I think 9, and I've got 2 that are in the middle of being done. But this is not for me selling myself or anything like that. I'm not the kind of person that's any good at self promotion and sales and things like that. But it's because of the stories that I wrote. So this one, I'll read you the back blurb because it's telling. It says 7 years ago, a free-spirited Viv Davis left her dreary British life behind to go on a new adventure in Brazil. It wasn't quite what she imagined life abroad would be like, and she took a few wrong turns along the way. Now the director of an English language school in a tiny rural city called Botiquipario, she begins to question how she ended up living a life she despises. With her business failing, trapped in a codependent relationship, she seeks out professional help. And the rest is fiction, okay? But that first part of it wasn't fiction whatsoever. That was based very much on a life that I have lived, on a true story, I don't ever write myself as a character. We'll talk about that in a minute. But in this particular book, I forced myself to write that character because it was something over my life. Friends have said, oh, you should write a book, and I did. By that point, I'd already written and published 5. But I don't like sitting in negative emotions. I've always been a bit of an escapist in that sense. I've always bypassed my emotions by channeling them into creative work, whether that be books, music, poetry, dance, theatre. Those are usually my outlets. And this book, I forced myself to write it. It was in 2020, and I remember just hating every second of it because it was forcing me to look at something that I never wanted to think about again. So yeah, I moved to Brazil in 2007 with my first husband, which didn't work out. And I ended up, having to stay because we had a house. So I was waiting for the settlement and things like this. And then I ended up meeting my next partner, and him encouraging me to stay, to make the most, to learn language skills and everything. It turned out, 17 years later, that also didn't work out. But everything happens for a reason. I'm a very firm believer in that. But it's not been an easy life. I didn't choose an easy path by coming here. I think I have a little bit of a penchant for suffering. Maybe suffering for the art, or maybe that's just because the more I'm intuitive I'm becoming, the more that I'm tapping back into my gifts and being connected back to spirit. I'm realizing that perhaps it was my soul mission, it was my life purpose to go through these hardships, these difficulties, in order to learn more. I'm very much a person of wanting to learn about the world, to discover new things, to live to embrace life to the fullest. And it's all a bit of an adventure. And my idea of coming to Brazil was that it was going to be an adventure. And it has been. It's been a massive adventure. 2007, we're in 2026, 19 years. And it's been a tough one. It has been very, very tough. It's forced me to let go. I started learning to let go back in 2007. The moment that I stepped here in this country, I had to keep letting go over and over again. First of all, to family, to friends, to career, to the life that I'd known. So, already at 22, I was letting go. Prior to that, in fact, but at 18, I was living in Spain. but I went back home. But so letting go has been a very constant theme throughout my life, and it's something that you become kind of second nature at, and people often mistake that as coldness or lack of empathy or lack of care. It's not. It's because you have no choice. Once you get to a certain point, you're only causing yourself suffering by continuing to try and cling on to past experiences, past people, past experiences. I said that, yeah. Otherwise, you just live in this constant state of dissatisfaction. And I've learned over the last couple of years specifically that the objective, and since my son was born, the objective was what? To live in the now, to be present in the now. Whenever we're living, reminiscing, when we're thinking with nostalgia over the past or yearning for the past, we're living in the past. We're not actually consciously participating in our reality as we're creating it. And we are co-creators of the universe and our world and our experience within it. And when we're projecting into the future, when we're looking ahead of, oh, I wish it could be like this, or I want it to be like that, fantasizing, writing books like this, escapism, they have a purpose. They helped me, kind of craft and uncover little bits of information that I wasn't aware of in myself, in my psyche, because I didn't think I had anything in common with these characters. But it's projections out. And that's the difference between manifestation and projection. So when we use our creative gifts, that's a direct line to the universe. That's a direct line to our higher selves or our shadow selves, our inner child, our unacknowledged voice within, okay? The subconscious. It tells us about things that we might not be aware of, that we either are craving and want in our lives, or we're trying to avoid. And so that's future projection. It can be manifestation, but not until you know how to use it. And that's why I brought the books up here, because these books for me represent when I was unconscious. I was not consciously aware of the world that I was creating. I was simply, it was like I was an observer of all these characters as I was writing them. But I had absolutely no connection to them except for this one. And this was a turning point. This book for me was a turning point when I wrote it, The Teacher's Tale, Rosa Espinosa, because it was forcing me to use real past situations, a real life situation, and I couldn't pretend that it was another character. I had to deal with it. I got into writing it, and I couldn't carry on writing that story because I wasn't ready to face it. So I made a load of fantastical fiction about it and tried to make it funnier, tried to make it more interesting, more entertaining for myself. And it was what if my plans had gone through the way that I wanted them? What if I had escaped at that point? What if I hadn't have had to be on the path that I was on at that point? But I already had to reconcile that within myself because of I'd accepted when I became a mother, because that's what truly happened. I became a mother, and that forced me to make a decision to let go fully of my life in the UK and to accept the reality. The reality was that I was going to be a mother, and I was going to be, if I was going to stay aligned with my beliefs, my core values, then that life had to be in Brazil, even if it meant my own demise in the process, and then letting go of that in order so that I could be the best version of myself for my son, to give him all the love, and to not carry some resentment to my child in the future. This is absolutely, because then I would be a hypocrite, So, but it forced me. All of this has forced me, and becoming a mother forced me into a huge dark night of the soul during pregnancy. And so, yeah, I've spent, I think, every day of my pregnancy letting go even more, over and over and over again, dismantling the ego, dismantling every desire for myself, every want and need for myself. And then I got to the point, you know, a few years ago, 3 years ago maybe, that I no longer knew who I was. I had no idea. There was nothing of my ego left, really, other than being a mother. And I, you know, if not for the divine, if not for the universe, picking me up at that very, very last fragment of ego death, and reminding me that yes, I was love, and that everything that I had done had been for love, and that I was aligned spiritually as well as in the physical. And then rebuilding from there from a new perspective, and that's where all of this has come from. This is where Elysian Aeon was born, because it's my Elysian fields, my Elysium era of life, rebuilding from a new perspective, from a grounded in and directly aligned with my inner world, reflecting my outer world. And that's caused so many towers for me personally. It kind of stopped me from being able to write fiction for a while, because I wasn't interested in building more fictitious stories. I was tired of living in the illusion of fiction, of escaping into fiction. I was too busy creating my own reality, and I still am now. But now I can indulge it a little more. I can get that creative spark back a little bit, but I'm more concerned with making it real, making it in the real world. It's the same. I had the same issue. I started writing books because I've written music my entire life, and there was some issues, some topics that came up that I couldn't fully express in a song in a few minutes, you know, in a verse, in 3 verses and a chorus, or 2 verses, a chorus, and bridges. So it forced me into writing deeper storylines, to explore characters, to explore themes and topics. And it's been fantastic. It's taught me so much, especially the Stone Agents work that I've done, and Dora, my Pandora myth, retelling mythology that I'm currently editing to publish. It helped in my transformation journey, and balancing out the mythic, the spiritual path with moralism, with material, and bringing that all together into the physical reality, the physical plane, the 3D world and experience, balancing out my water element, because I am a grand water trine, with my South Node in Scorpio as well, which is, you know, another water, and not one of the greatest, especially in the South Node. So I've had a lot of balance of that water to do over my experiences. And then I came to the point of just understanding that in a small little song I couldn't tell the full story. So then I moved to the books, and then the same experience now with the books. I felt that I wasn't getting the same satisfaction as I was as I could be. I wasn't pushing myself far enough, because it wasn't incorporating everything that is for me, that is relevant. It didn't get quite cut to the meaning, because you can dress things up as fiction, or even when you're unaware that you're dressing it up as fiction, you're dealing with the subconscious at that level. But when you become aware that it is fiction, that you're writing to portray a real experience or event, then you become a little bit uncomfortable, or at least I did. I became uncomfortable with that, and I wanted to move on to more grounded teaching, mentorship, and that's why I've moved to the tarot and the channeling, because that's what I am. I am a channel, and I've had to learn how to do that through myself, through my own experience. It's taken 41 years, right? It's taken 41 years for me to grind that in and understand that I have a very deep connection to spirit. I have a very deep connection to the ethereal world, and to love, the manifestation of love in this 3D reality. And that's my entire reason for being. A balance within dualism, or within duality, using intellect, creativity, and passion and intuition, within the realms of a world full of conflict and contradictions and challenges. You know, it's grounding it in, and that's the work that I'm focusing on moving forward, like more of I would say perhaps more like a metaphysical scientific experience, but I still plan to do my creative work, but it doesn't quite hit the same way. You know, I feel that I'm being called to do something greater than simply tell a good story, because I tell good stories, I know that. Loving on myself, yeah, I have to. I've learned that. That's a new skill that I'm learning. It's one that has taken me a very long time to know, to have in myself, the belief. But yeah, sometimes, and I said this in my reading yesterday, it's the stories that we tell ourselves, right, in order to cope, or the stories that we tell ourselves because we're not quite ready to see the full picture. And Spirit is very good at doing that. The divine will give us stories that we can relate to, whether that's through the media, watching television shows, films, a good book, whatever, or a song, and we just feel it, or we identify with a character or with a situation, and we don't immediately identify straight away with that character, but then it becomes clear afterwards, and it's like somebody's telling our story for us. And Spirit kind of does that to ease us into things, to help us to uncover the hidden truth of the self and the psyche, the ego, the expression, the individual expression of the all, the individuated expression of the all through the perception of individuation. Because it requires dismantlement of the ego in order to get there. And that ego can be built up over decades, right? And it's not even just decades, this is all of the generations prior to ourselves, and what we carry from society, from conditioning, from secondhand experiences, and it's shedding those layers in order to come back to the true expression. And that's through the emotional aspect. It's about getting back in touch with our emotions, what we feel, you know, those niggling sensations, if something doesn't feel right, if our stomach jumps, if we feel fear, those are our instincts. That's our inner knowing, and that's the way that we communicate with Spirit. And that is just by listening to that is how I have navigated through my life, and how I have gone through this immense ascension and healing journey, by going within, by feeling it, even when it was ugly, even when it was painful, even when I knew that it was going to like ruin my life, my perceived life. And then afterwards finding out that it was the perception of the loss, it was the perception of the betrayal, of the hurt, of the fear of looking at those truths that was holding me back the entire time. So yeah, that's the story I was asked to share with you. It might be a bit of a long one. I do hope it helps. I hope I made my point. I prefer writing things down and planning them out before I just speak, but there we go. I was asked to do it this way. That's the message. And yeah, what story are you telling yourself? What do you identify with? What feels aligned with you and that you haven't recognized within yourself up to this point? And can you have a look a bit deeper at that now and see if there's a new way that you can look at it? All right, I wish you much peace, joy, abundance, and light and healing on this journey. And namaste.